The Winchester rifle trembled in Jake Thornton's weathered hands as he stared through the cabin window. 50 Apache warriors sat motionless on their horses, painted for war, surrounding his small ranch like death itself had come calling. Behind him, wrapped in his wool blanket, the most beautiful woman he'd ever laid eyes on, Ayanna, wife of Chief Iron Wolf. Her long black hair cascaded over bare shoulders, and those dark eyes held secrets that could get them both killed. One night. That's all it had been. One storm. One wounded woman seeking shelter. One moment of weakness when two lonely souls found comfort in each other's arms. Now the morning sun cast long shadows across the Arizona desert, and Jake knew his reckoning had arrived. The Apache chief's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Sergeant Thornton, I know who you are." Jake's finger hovered over the trigger. 45 years of living, 10 years of hiding from his past, and it all came down to this moment. What choice would a broken man make when faced with losing the first thing he'd cared about in a decade? Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I love hearing from fellow lovers of the Old West. 24 hours earlier, Jake had been just another forgotten soldier trying to drown his demons in whiskey. The Battle of Little Bighorn had left scars deeper than the Apache arrow wound in his shoulder, scars that ached every time the desert wind howled through the canyon. His horse ranch sat 30 miles from Fort Apache, far enough from civilization that the ghosts of dead cavalrymen couldn't find him. Or so he'd thought. The blizzard struck without warning, turning the October night into a white hell. Jake was securing the stable doors when he saw her, a figure stumbling through the snow, clutching her side. Blood seeped between her fingers, dark against the doe-skin dress that clung to every curve of her body. "Jesus," he muttered, dropping his tools. She collapsed just as he reached her, and Jake caught her against his chest. Even wounded, even half frozen, she was breathtaking. High cheekbones, full lips, skin like burnished copper. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. Intelligent, defiant, unafraid. "Please," she whispered in perfect English. "They're coming for me." Jake carried her inside, his hands trembling as he laid her on his bed. The bullet wound in her shoulder was clean, a through and through. As he cut away the bloodied leather, she watched him with those dark eyes, never flinching. "You're not what I expected," she said softly. "What did you expect? A monster?" That's what they tell Apache children about white soldiers. Jake's hands stilled. "Are you Apache?" "Half. My mother was Mexican." She tried to sit up, wincing. "My name is Ayanna. I'm the wife of Chief Iron Wolf." The words hit Jake like a punch to the gut. He'd heard of Iron Wolf, the last war chief still fighting the government, the man who'd rather die than surrender his people to a reservation. "Then you shouldn't be here," Jake said, reaching for his whiskey. "No," she agreed, her voice barely a whisper. "I shouldn't." But she didn't leave, and Jake didn't ask her to. As he cleaned her wound, their eyes met in the lamplight. She was forbidden in every way that mattered. Married, Apache, dangerous as a loaded gun. But when her hand touched his face, tracing the scar that ran from his temple to his jaw, Jake felt something he'd thought was dead forever. "How did you get this?" she asked. "Same place I learned to hate myself." "Little Bighorn?" He nodded, surprised she knew. "I was there," she said quietly. "Iron Wolf's first wife died in the fighting after. That's when he took me, to unite our bands against you." "Do you love him?" The question hung between them like smoke. Outside, the wind screamed against the cabin walls. "I respect him," she said finally. "But love?" She shook her head. "Love is choosing to stay when you could run." Jake's throat went dry. In the firelight, with her hair falling loose around her shoulders and the blanket slipping low enough to reveal the swell of her breasts. She was the most dangerous temptation he'd ever faced. "They'll kill me if they find you here," he said. "Yes, and you. They'll give me to the soldiers as a peace offering. I'll die in a white man's prison." She moved closer, close enough that he could smell the sage in her hair, feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "I don't want to die without knowing what it feels like," she whispered. What feels like?" "Being chosen. Being wanted for myself, not for politics or alliances or survival." Jake's resolve crumbled. When she kissed him, soft and desperate, he tasted freedom and damnation all at once. Her hands were urgent, pulling at his shirt, and he was lost. They made love with the desperation of the condemned, two broken souls finding solace in the storm. She moved like water beneath him, whispering his name like a prayer. And for one perfect night, Jake forgot about dead soldiers and broken promises. When dawn broke, she was gone. Only the scent of sage and the memory of her touch remained. Until the Apache war party surrounded his cabin, Chief Iron Wolf was everything Jake had expected, and nothing like he'd imagined. Tall and broad-shouldered, with silver threading through his black hair and eyes that had seen too much death. But when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of a man making impossible choices. "Step outside, Sergeant. We have business." Jake checked his weapons. The Winchester, his Colt revolver, a knife in his boot. Enough to take some of them with him, not enough to survive. He opened the door and stepped onto the porch. "I'm not a sergeant anymore," he said. Iron Wolf's smile held no warmth. "Once a soldier, always a soldier. I remember you from Apache Pass 23 years ago. You were the one who tried to stop your men from shooting the women and children." The memory hit Jake like a physical blow. Apache Pass, where everything had gone wrong, where orders became massacre, where a young cavalry sergeant had chosen humanity over duty and earned nothing but disgrace. "You remember that? A man remembers kindness, even from his enemies." Iron Wolf dismounted, his warriors tensing. "My wife told me what you did last night." Jake's hand moved to his gun. "She was wounded. I helped her." "Yes. And then—" The silence stretched between them like a loaded spring. Jake could lie, but those dark eyes would see through it. Could fight, but 50 warriors would cut him down before he cleared leather. "Then I made a choice I'll have to live with," he said finally. Iron Wolf studied him for a long moment. "My wife is not in your cabin." "No." "Where is she?" "Gone. Left before dawn." "To where?" Jake met his gaze steadily. "I don't know." It was the truth. Ayanna had vanished like smoke, leaving only hoofprints heading south toward the border. Iron Wolf stepped closer, close enough that Jake could see the pain beneath the warrior's mask. "The army is coming," Iron Wolf said quietly. "General Miles has orders to capture or kill every Apache not on the reservation. My people are tired, hungry. We cannot fight much longer. Then surrender. And watch my children die slowly on government rations instead of quickly in battle?" Iron Wolf shook his head. "There is another way, but it requires trust." "What kind of trust?" "The kind that might get us both killed." Iron Wolf's eyes never left Jake's face. "My wife has family in Mexico. If she reaches them safely, my people will know it's possible. Others will follow, and my band can survive without surrendering our souls to your government." Jake felt the trap closing around him. "You want me to help her escape?" "I want you to ensure she reaches the Rio Grande alive. You know this country better than any man. You speak enough Apache to pass for a traitor." "And—" Iron Wolf paused. "She trusts you now." "What's in it for you?" "When she's safe, I surrender myself to General Miles. A prize like that might buy mercy for the families who remain. It was a death sentence wrapped in nobility. Jake had seen enough military mercy to know Iron Wolf would never leave army custody alive. And for me, a clean record. Miles wants a victory, not a court-martial for a deserter. The word hit Jake like a slap. Deserter. It was true. He'd walked away from his post at Fort Grant after Apache Pass, unable to stomach any more Indian fighting. For 10 years, he'd hidden under an assumed name, but the Army's reach was long. How do I know you won't kill me once she's safe? Iron Wolf was quiet for a moment, studying the horizon. Because killing you won't bring back my first wife, won't erase what your people did to mine. But maybe helping you save this one life can balance the scales a little. It was insane, suicidal. A week through hostile desert with a wanted Apache woman, dodging cavalry patrols and Mexican bandits, all to deliver her to freedom while her husband marched to his death. Jake thought of Ayanna's eyes in the firelight, the way she'd whispered his name, the taste of redemption he'd found in her arms. "When do we leave?" he asked. Iron Wolf's smile was sharp as a blade. "She's waiting at Skeleton Canyon. You have until sundown to decide if you're the man she thinks you are, or the coward your army believes you to be." The war party wheeled their horses and rode north, leaving Jake alone with his choice and the memory of a woman who'd shown him what it meant to be worth saving. Skeleton Canyon earned its name from the bleached bones of Apache and cavalry scattered among the rocks, a graveyard where two worlds had collided and both had lost. Jake found Ayanna there at sunset, sitting beside a small fire like she'd been waiting forever. She changed from the blood-stained doe skin into a simple cotton dress that hugged her curves and left her arms bare. Her hair was braided with silver ornaments that caught the firelight, and when she looked up at him, Jake saw something in her eyes he'd never seen in any woman before. Complete trust. "You came," she said simply. "Did you think I wouldn't? I hoped you would. Hope and certainty are different things." Jake dismounted, leading his horse to water. The pack mule behind carried supplies for a week, enough to reach Mexico if they moved fast and stayed lucky. "Your husband made me an offer," he said. "I know. He's sacrificing himself for the chance that some of our people might survive." She stood, moving to him with that fluid grace that made his chest tight. "Just like you're sacrificing your safety for a woman you barely know. Maybe I know you better than you think." She stopped close enough that he could see the golden flecks in her dark eyes. "What do you know about me, Jake Thornton?" "I know you're brave enough to run from an arranged marriage, smart enough to speak 3 languages, strong enough to take a bullet and keep riding." He reached out, touching her cheek. "And I know you taste like freedom." She leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. "And I know you're the first man who ever chose me over duty." They rode through the night, following game trails and dry washes that wouldn't hold their tracks. Ayanna rode like she was born in the saddle, keeping pace without complaint even when the trail turned treacherous. At dawn, they made cold camp in a hidden arroyo. Jake took first watch while she slept, curled against his saddle like a cat. Even sleeping, she was beautiful, the kind of beauty that started wars and toppled kingdoms. "Tell me about your first wife," she said when she woke. "Sarah." The name still hurt to say. "She died of influenza, our second winter. We were going to have children, build something lasting." He was quiet for a moment. "After she died, I stopped believing in forever." "What do you believe in now?" Jake looked at her, memorizing every line of her face. "Right now. This moment. You." On the second day, they were spotted by a cavalry patrol. Lieutenant Morrison, Jake's former commanding officer, the man who'd labeled him a deserter. They ran hard through the desert heat, Jake's knowledge of the terrain, their only advantage. There, Ayanna pointed to a narrow canyon cutting into the mesa. I know this place. They lost the patrol in the maze of rock, but Jake knew Morrison wouldn't give up. The man had been hunting him for 10 years. He wouldn't stop now. That night, as they camped in a hidden cave, Ayanna came to him in the darkness. Her hands were urgent, desperate, and when she kissed him, it tasted like goodbye. Make love to me, she whispered. Like it's the last time. It won't be. Promise me something. Her fingers traced the scars on his chest. If we don't make it to Mexico, if they catch us, they won't. Promise me you'll remember this. Remember that for 3 days, you weren't running from your past. You were running towards something beautiful. They made love with desperate intensity, 2 souls knowing their time was borrowed. Jake tried to memorize everything. The way she moved beneath him, the small sounds she made, the way she whispered Apache words against his skin like blessings. On the 3rd morning, they reached the Rio Grande. Mexico was a rifle shot away across the muddy water. Freedom, safety, a new life. But Morrison was waiting. The lieutenant stepped from behind a cottonwood tree, his Colt trained on Jake's chest. Behind him, a squad of cavalry emerged from the brush. End of the line, Thornton. Jake's hand moved to his gun, but Morrison clicked back the hammer. I wouldn't. Not with the lady so close. Ayanna's horse danced nervously, sensing the tension. Her dark eyes met Jake's, and in them he saw acceptance. She'd known this moment would come. Let her go, Morrison. Your fight is with me. My fight is with both of you. She's a fugitive Apache. You're a deserter. Both worth good money to the right people. That's when the war party crested the hill behind them. Iron Wolf at the head with 20 warriors? The chief had kept his word. He'd come to surrender, but not before, ensuring his wife's safety. Gentlemen, Iron Wolf called out, his voice carrying across the water. I believe we have something to discuss. The standoff lasted 3 hours under the blazing sun. 3 armed groups stood ready, each with something to lose, each waiting for someone else to blink first. Jake stood between worlds, the army that had cast him out, the woman who'd redeemed him, and the Apache chief who'd offered him a chance at honor. In the end, it was Ayanna who broke the stalemate. She spurred her horse forward, splashing into the Rio Grande. Enough, she called back. I choose my own fate. Morrison swung his rifle toward her, but Jake was faster. His Colt barked once, and the lieutenant spun and fell. The cavalrymen raised their weapons, but Iron Wolf's warriors were already moving. Hold! Iron Wolf's voice cut through the chaos. He rode slowly into the river, stopping beside his wife. For a moment, husband and wife looked at each other across the gulf of their choices. Be free, Iron Wolf said simply. Live the life you choose. Ayanna's eyes filled with tears. She touched his face once, gently, then turned her horse toward Mexico. Jake spurred his mount into the water. Behind him, gunfire erupted as cavalry and Apache settled old scores. But he didn't look back. For once in his life, he was riding toward something instead of away from it. They crossed into Mexico as the sun touched the western mountains. On the far bank, Ayanna stopped and looked back at the country that had shaped her, scarred her, and ultimately freed her. Do you regret it? Jake asked. She turned to him, and in her smile, he saw everything he'd been searching for without knowing it. Acceptance, hope, the promise of tomorrow. I regret nothing, she said. They rode south into the desert together, 2 souls who'd found redemption in the most unlikely place, in each other's arms, under the endless sky of the American West. 6 months later, Jake would receive word that Iron Wolf had died with honor at Fort Marion, and that the last of the Apache Wars had ended. But that's a story for another time. If this tale of desert passion and frontier redemption stirred something in you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from the untamed West. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I love connecting with fellow lovers of classic Western tales.